Your story is the same as that of the nation of Israel. Israel was the chosen nation of God, just as we are called in Colossians chapter 3, verse 12, God's chosen ones, His holy and beloved people. Due to sin and disobedience, Israel found themselves in exile, longing for restoration of their land, and more importantly, restoration in their standing and relationship with their God. Much the same, we find ourselves in this same predicament quite often. We are the true, holy, beloved children of God, but sometimes God feels far off and distant from us. It could be because of any number of things. The struggle in general is universal, but it is realized in different ways in each person's life. Each of us at times, or even right now, know what it is like to have a longing for things to change, and we know what it is like to feel distant and exiled.
Four months ago in July marks what I would like to call the most miserable period of my life. Prior to this, I was content. I had joy, I had peace, I was really happy. But as I would find out, it was a very false sense of peace. At the end of July, I was randomly bombarded with doubts, worry, and confusion. And I felt as if I was just coming out of nowhere, and I couldn't make sense of any of it. And in one day, I went from being really happy to being really depressed. I would constantly try to reason through the turmoil that I had, but that only made things worse, and I just didn't understand what was going on. The entire time I wondered, why would God let me suffer like this? I constantly pleaded with Him to take it away every single day, to restore my mind to where it was, and I just kept telling myself, and my parents would say the same, that I just need to trust God, that He's going to see me through it. But throughout this entire time, He seemed so silent, and that just made the anxiety a lot worse. I used to spend a lot of time around Bethel at Powerhouse and retreats and on Sundays, but over the last few years, I've been out of touch with God's people. I was kind of alone in my struggles, and I knew that if I really wanted change, I had to get back involved with the people of God.
My great longing lasted nearly a decade after being married for just 2 years, and all my friends around me were having their first babies. After arriving in Kenya, I learned that the culture where we lived couldn't even give a name to a woman unless she had a child. Men were expected to abandon their wives and take another if they didn't produce by the second or third year. I was confident that Randy would never do that to me, but I prayed and prayed that God would grant us the joy of having our own. During that time, we made 3 attempts at adoption here in Chicago, and all failed. Each time it was heartbreaking, and my hopes were shattered that I'd ever be a mother.
At least some of you are familiar with our present situation. Our time in Angola, at least as resident missionaries, has come to a close. We have invitations to return for several weeks at a time. In fact, the next visit is scheduled for the last half of January. But our challenge is to understand what the Lord is saying about our ministry in the days ahead. We would have liked at least 3 or 4 more years in Angola to complete the teaching, training, discipling, and evangelizing that we'd been doing. We felt that was what God wanted us to do. We struggled for a year to get temporary stay visas, but it just didn't work out.